الإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله مرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. So in the last class, we discussed the importance of the word al-kitab, the scripture. And we reviewed that. We talked about the deep meanings to the word al-kitab and why it's important for us as Muslims to understand that. And also how the Ahlul Kitab of the past, those people of the scripture in previous nations, how they turned their backs on the book. Right? Allah describes them, نَبَذُوهُ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِهِمْ, that they turn their backs on the book. Right? And many people, they did so consciously. Right? That it wasn't just simply a mistake, it's a conscious decision that they made to turn their backs on the book altogether. And other people also would exploit the good intentions and the goodwill of the people to then exploit the people, manipulate them, and also maybe even for money and so on and so forth, and changing the book, right? And doing what we call tahrif of the book, or tashif of the book, basically changing the book or altering it for ulterior motives and nefarious means, right? That some people, they had ill will and bad intentions, and they maybe would change the book for whatever reason they deemed fit. And we mentioned that when a person changes the book and alters the scripture, he's really altering a person's connection with Allah, right? Because Allah, through his speech, Allah will describe himself. Allah will also set certain affairs straight. Allah will talk about the prophets, tell us about the reality of the prophets, the reality of the angels, the reality of this life and the next, the reality of who we are, right? So we said that the book, it captures these realities for us. And if you alter the book, you're then altering how we view reality. You're altering our lens on reality. You're altering and you're effectively undercutting our ability to understand reality then. It's very, very important. This is why altering the scripture, it's so detrimental to the spiritual life of any believer in any belief system, right? This is why when we say that the previous scriptures were altered, this is very, very important, right? So the Bible altered, the previous scriptures, they've been altered, because when that alteration takes place, that effectively alters the way those respective nations view themselves and they view existence, and also how they view Allah and how they approach existence and approach Allah, right? And their view of Allah, their perspective on life, their perspective on creation, their perspective on existence. So altering the scripture, it's a big deal, right? And we know this to be the case, but we're just giving some more detail and tafsil that we understand the gravity of altering scripture. And that the Jews, unfortunately, many of them, they had a penchant for this. They had they made it their thing, unfortunately. One of the things that we see in the Old Testament, for example, and it's important that we talk about this. We know what the Jews, they did to their scripture. Some of the Jews, for example, in the Old Testament, the way that they speak about the prophets of old is completely off the wall. Right, there's certain things I'm even embarrassed to mention here, right? In terms of them accusing their prophets of adultery, they accuse their prophets of stealing, a lot of other even worse things that sort of embarrassed to even mention it. But you wonder, you'd ask, any reasonable person would ask themselves, how did this end up in a holy scripture, right? Really, I think we can ask that question, and it's really, really unfortunate. Because when we talk about the prophets, even objectively, when you speak about the prophets, you recognize that if God sends a prophet, then that particular prophet will be an example for the people. So why would Allah send an example that commits fornication or drinks alcohol, gets drunk, and does all sorts of wild and crazy things, right? That's not the archetypical idea that you have about any prophet. No, a prophet is an upstanding citizen, an example, an exemplar, right? He's a qudwa hasana, like a good example, a pure example, a role model for how you should live your life. So these are the prophets. And by any objective frame of reference, we conclude that if a person's a prophet, he is in some way, somehow, an example for you. And these are the prophets of Allah, that they set the gold standard for us, how we should live our lives, right? So in this, when the Jews altered these aspects of the scripture in defaming the prophets, they really, really hurt the faith. They really, really hurt the faith of the believers and the believers' perspective on the prophets, right? So when the Jews did this, it was something really, really egregious, right? So Allah lists this as being one of the biggest sins of the Bani Israel, the biggest sins, right? That they altered the scripture. So here we will resume. These are some other of the transgressions of Bani Israel. And of course, as we mentioned in the previous class, that the Jews